I am Gloria Blackwell, AAUW CEO, and I'm looking forward to today's important and very deeply resonating conversation, Being Black in the Ivory, Truth-Telling about Anti-Black Racism in Higher Education with our outstanding fellowship alumna. At AAUW, our mission is rooted in advancing gender equity through education and advocacy. But we know and must always acknowledge that this mission is incomplete without confronting the persistent realities of racism, especially anti-Black racism, within the very institutions that we seek to transform. Higher education has long been positioned as a gateway to opportunity and economic empowerment for women. Yet, for far too many Black scholars, especially women, the academic landscape has also been fraught with systemic inequities, marginalization, and resistance to their voices and lived experiences. Today, I'm especially proud to be joined by an alumna who has not only bravely spoken truth to power, but has ignited a movement through her words, scholarship, and advocacy. Dr. Shardé Davis is a brilliant scholar, AAUW American Fellowship alumna, and the author of Being Black in the Ivory. It offers us a powerful lens into the challenges and triumphs of navigating academia while Black. Her book is not just a memoir or critique, it's a call to collective reckoning, a call to listen, to believe, to change, and to act. Dr. Davis joins us today to share insights that are both personal and profoundly universal. Insights that will undoubtedly challenge us, move us, and ultimately inspire us to do better within our institutions and our communities. Thank you all again so much for joining us today, and I encourage you to lean in, reflect deeply, and consider how each of us, regardless of our role, can contribute to dismantling racism in higher education and beyond. Dr. Shardé Davis is an associate professor in the Department of Communication and a faculty affiliate of the Africana Studies Institute and the Institute for Collaboration on Health, Intervention, and Policy at the University of Connecticut. She attended the University of California, Santa Barbara, and conducted undergraduate research through the Ronald E. McNair Scholars Program. Her work was awarded the Stephen H. Chaffee Undergraduate Research Award from the Department of Communication. She earned a BA in Communication and Feminist Studies, as well as her MA in Communication at UCSB, and later moved to Iowa City to complete her PhD in Communication Studies and a doctoral certificate in Gender, Women's, and Sexuality Studies at the University of Iowa. Dr. Davis's primary area of specialization is interpersonal communication, with emphasis on racial and gender identity. She has published her research in various academic outlets, such as Human Communication Research, Psychology of Women Quarterly, Women's Studies in Communication, and the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships. She is involved in various professional communities around the nation, and her service includes serving as the chair of the African American Communication and Culture Division of the National Communication Association. Her research has been formally recognized, of course, with our 2018 AAUW American Postdoctoral Fellowship by the Ford Foundation, and she was also the inaugural recipient of the 2021 Faculty of Color Working Group Fellowship funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. Welcome, Dr. Davis. So let's get started.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This is truly an honor and a pleasure. Yeah.
Great. Looking forward to this conversation. So let's get started.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Davis, many in our audience today may be familiar with your powerful hashtag, Black in the Ivory. I certainly remember when it was launched on Twitter. Yes, I do still call it Twitter.
Me
But
too.
others may be hearing about it for the first time.
Mm.
Can you take us back to the moment that inspired you to create it, sort of like what was happening in academia and in our country at the time? And how did that single act of truth telling grow really into a viral moment?
Mm. It 5 years ago, June, it was June tw of 2020. It's crazy, just to think about time. And how it seems like it was just yesterday, but it was 5 years ago. And it started, if we can all think back to the summer of 2020, the summer of racial reckoning. And I was reeling. We were in lockdown. I was in lockdown in San Diego for COVID, and there were the protests and the civil unrest that was happening with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and just the police brutality, the killings of Black and brown folks. And I was reeling because I was thinking about, I know. I know the seed, so to speak. I know what the root cause of what's happening, and that's anti-Blackness, and that's racism, and that's white supremacy. I personally didn't have a story about my own confrontation with police officers, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I don't have family members who have had a direct contact or confrontation or been killed at the hands of these public servants, or who should be public servants. And again, I'm thankful for that. But of course, I think like any Black person, any person at that time, I just was so deeply affected by what was happening. And again, partly because I was seeing other people who look like me who were being accosted, but also again, I was thinking much deeper as to again what's the root of this. And while I didn't have a personal story when it comes to the police, what I call the American injustice system, I knew all too well about what white supremacy and anti-Blackness and racism, how it's affected me in another social institution, and that was academia. And as I was sitting there, I was by myself in lockdown and thinking about what all of this, meant for me, and was personalizing it. Four words came to mind: Black in the Ivory. And I turned to social media because that was, again, in lockdown. I was by myself. So I was just thinking about how can I continue to get information, get tapped, remain tapped into news, and keep in contact with other people as we're all just dealing with this in this unprecedented moment. And I had returned to Twitter, and yeah, those four words came to mind, and I just thought about, I've got to get this out. There was so much inside of me. I've got to get this out. And I just want to start sharing my own stories about what it means to be Black in the Ivory, right? Again, I don't know what it means to be again, these interactions with police officers, but I do know, as I said, what it means to experience racism in another sector. It's, again, social institution. And who knew? My mind wasn't thinking about it again because I was so cocooned. I was by myself. My mind wasn't thinking that other people would resonate with it. It really was so personal. Just, I have to get this out. And it was really therapeutic to be able to just share my own experiences. I just was amazed, truly. That there were so many others who also experienced that. And so yeah, hashtag Black in the Ivory. That went live. It was Saturday, June 6th, in the evening, and Sunday, June 7th of 2020, it was viral. And I think the top 20 hashtags of at that time. And so so many what I call Black academics were sharing their stories, their Black in the Ivory stories about yeah, across various topics, various individuals. They were recounting stories that happened 15 years ago, or they were sharing something that just happened last week. And yeah, and so that is where it started 5 years ago.
Yeah, I love that because like you had no idea that it was going to sort of take off like that, right? And so
No.
yeah, and as you were writing Being Black in the Ivory, sort of what were you seeing and hearing, whether it was in your own experiences or through, those stories of others that signal to you that the book needed to be written and shared with really a wider audience?
A few things. One, I was in a really, well, three things. One is I was really fascinated because within the span of 36, 48 hours, I was reading every single tweet. Every time someone used that hashtag, I was reading what they were sharing. So the first thing is I was so fascinated by the repetition of stories. I was fascinated that it didn't matter, again, if they were faculty person or a grad student, it didn't matter if they were in London or in California, that there were very similar stories that were being told. And I was really fascinated by that is because to me, it showed me that we're not talking about individual level differences, we're talking about systems at play, right? And sometimes these systems are using the same old tried and true tactics to be able to oppress individuals, right? Like they're not reinventing it, or it's not reinventing the wheel. So it makes sense then that we're all going through very similar experiences, even though we all have different standpoints in this kind of social realm. So I was really fascinated by the similarity of stories, again, down to the minutia. The second thing is that, the really unique thing about Black in the Ivory is that, most academics, when they do a book, they're the ones going to academic publishers to be able to kind of pitch their idea and to be able to seek out a contract. But because of the virality of the hashtag, it was a really in a unique position where publishers were coming, from the outside in, to pitch. And so I didn't even think about a book. I really, honestly, I talk about Black in the Ivory just kind of growing legs and running. And I feel like I was just running after it. Like, whoa, okay, this is catching a lot of steam, and I was not expecting any of this. I was on the tenure track. I was still junior faculty. Again, we're in lockdown. I'm trying to make sense of just my own life. I had no idea that this was going to happen. And so then for those, that opportunity to come, I kind of had to sit with, okay, does this make sense? Is this a viable next step? And so I really had to take a few beats and think about, I don't want to rush. I'm not the type ever to rush into anything. I think it's so important to just kind of take a step back and think, is this appropriate? Does this make sense? And what I resolved, and the third point to your question, is that there were so many individuals who were using that hashtag and who were coming to Twitter and using that hashtag. As a way of like catharsis and to be seen and to be heard and to share and to stand in their truth. And we're doing so for those reasons and not necessarily for the white gaze or for public consumption. But what I was noticing was that the stories were being consumed, right? There were provosts. I was getting emails from university presidents and provosts and deans and organizations who were like, we're assigning the Black in the Ivory tweet so that people can understand, these really important stories. And initially I was like, okay, well, that's great. And then after a while, I was like, whoa, people didn't sign up for that. And so I, conceived that this book is a great opportunity for Black academics to opt in, right? They're opting in to what I call leasing their experience, leasing their stories for others to be able to read and to sit with and to learn from them. And so that's how I, decided to lean into this opportunity. But it is really rare. I just want to share that it's very rare for like I said, for presses to pitch it. That usually never happens. So that's something I don't take for granted. I'm so thankful that these editors had enough foresight to think about that these stories and this movement needs to be in print and archived.
Right. I love that because that really demonstrates the power of what you started, right? And when it went viral, sort of bringing in everyone and giving them an opportunity to share their stories, and the fact that you didn't have to push it out and go and try to find someone, to on the publishing track, right? They came to you. understanding that it had been elevated and that it was such a clear topic that wasn't only a topic about what was happening here in our own country, right? That it really is something that had a global impact as well. And I certainly remember when it was all happening. And as you mentioned, we were on lockdown, right? It was during the pandemic. And so people did have more time in many ways to do sort of that level of reflection and being able to, if they found something where they felt that really resonated with them, to take the time to share their own experience. And so you did start that trend and open that door that gave people that level of being seen, which I think was really, really important,
Yeah.
that's
And if I could just say, Gloria, I do not mean to interrupt,
Mhm.
but that there's a seed of an idea, but nothing goes viral off of one person. In the
Mhm.
same way, my name might be on the front of the book, but this book would not happen without an entire group of people who decided to lease their stories, right? So it really, I think, speaks to the power of the people, right? You can have a great idea, but it's got to resonate with others, right? And for them to want to and to choose to participate and to lean in. So I think it speaks to the fact that also these are stories that I think for the most part had never really been told. This is a kind of a global conversation we hadn't really had, right? So many people think about academia being this liberal leaning social institution, right?
Not
So I think
quite.
so like I think it was a moment of for individuals, certainly non-Black individuals, to be able to say, oh, and certainly I'll even take a step further and say white individuals to be
Mhm.
able to sit back and say, oh, shoot, we thought that was their, a problem that these other, institutional actors had to deal with. We didn't necessarily think that it was that bad in-house, right?
Right. That's right.
Um, yeah, and so to be able to just kind of plant that seed, right?
Mhm.
But to have so many others to be able, because again, it requires other people. No one could do anything by themselves.
Right.
So yeah, yeah, so many. I still am just so taken aback that there were just so many other people who could resonate with it, and taken aback in a good and a bad way, right?
Right.
You don't want to hear that other people are experiencing harm and being
That's
assaulted.
absolutely true. That's true. And I think that a number of people who may have been shocked by it also thought that many of the things that people were bringing up, well, maybe that was a thing back in the 1960s, but it's 2020. Obviously, that's not something that's going on now. And being sort of faced with the reality of no, this is what people are experiencing now. That's very true, right?
That's
So think about the current state that we are in, right? Given the
mm,
pushback against diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Those efforts that are happening on campuses today, how do you see being Black in the Ivory sort of resonating in the current climate, right? And what do you hope it offers to those sort of navigating or witnessing the obvious racism in academic spaces right now?
yeah. You know, back at that time 5 years ago, the goal of the hashtag the book and where I stand today, I remain unchanged.
Mhm.
And that is I don't necessarily, for me personally, just Shardé M. Davis, my goal is not to have conversations to the outside. It is to have conversations in-house. It is to have
Mhm.
conversations as Black folks, right? And um, at that moment in 2020, um, there were a lot of conversations and a lot of information being shared from the inside out, right? We were telling white folks, you need to listen, sit down and be quiet for a second, right? We need you to hear what we've got to say. We need you to take a step back and to wait for our cues, and to wait for our instruction. And some took heed to that, right? And followed suit. But for me and who I am, and my politic and how I was raised, um, that's just not my ministry. I'm just going to keep it real with you. My ministry is, again, to be in conversation with other people who look like me and to think about how are we going to move, right?
Mm,
How are we going to adjust our behavior so that we can continue on? What do we think is important? Right, and what are things that we're going to focus on that is going to progress us forward? So I was less concerned about trying to educate the masses and more so about facilitating conversations in-house. And so I think that that is especially true right now. There's been so much education, there's so much information that's already been archived and already been out there. And I think this is a moment where, I mean, we're seeing it with Black women in the 92%, where we're like, you know what, y'all, we've done our part. We've expended our energy, we gave our time, we've done everything that we could, and now we kind of need to pull back, right? The 92% talking about this is our season of rest.
mhm,
And the book, I'm very clear that this is a conversation for Black folks for healing. And I know that you can't heal from something that you have not recognized is a problem, right? That
right.
you have not, and where you can't heal from something where you don't feel validated in knowing that it's a truth, right? That there are individuals, there are Black academics who are operating in isolation in academia who are experiencing racism, but have been so gaslit and racelit to where they think they're the target of something because of something they're doing, as opposed to a corrupt system and a corrupt social institution.
Mhm,
So I think that, or not I think I know that I approached this book to say, hey, you're not alone. What you've experienced is not because you're unintelligent. It's not because you're ill-equipped. It's not because you're unskilled. It's not because you don't deserve to be there. It's because you're a target of a system that was designed for you to fail.
mm,
Right. And so I'm here to tell you that what you've experienced is, and the feelings that you have about it and what you have just what you've known to be true, it's valid. And I'm affirming you, right?
yeah.
And so how then can we move once we've been affirmed and validated about our truth? Right? And how then can we move into a space of being able to heal from that trauma,
Right.
right? And using those correct terms because it's trauma, it's racial trauma.
Mhm, yeah.
So that's where I see us at is getting off the front lines, going into the fort, right? Just like soldiers have to do. You can't be on the front lines with the weapons in your hand 24/7. At some point, you've got to retreat to the fort. You've got to get nourishment, right?
Mm,
You've got to go and go with your comrades and maybe laugh, break bread together. And you need somebody to go and to attend to those wounds, right?
yeah.
And you got to
Yeah.
rest. And I think
Absolutely.
that's where we're at right now.
Right. Getting the rest. I completely co-sign that. I can remember even before this, we got to this current situation. I can remember I attended an event last year here in DC that was primarily there were all higher education leaders, and at least half of them were presidents and that sort of thing. And the level of sort of people sharing their truths about what was going on in their institutions, the level of obvious pain that so many of them were going through
Mhm.
was striking, right? To be in a room full of highly educated, highly qualified, amazing women. And then at a certain point, to be in a room where they have come together, you are hearing stories that are breaking your heart, the tears are flowing, and you're thinking, how can that be a reality that we are seeing, right? I mean, this was in 2024. And so the sort of taking care of yourself and not feeling as though because you're in that role, you have to be the one, right, that is now going to be leading the charge, being a part of that 92% that you just have to keep stepping up, right? is
Mhm.
definitely something that I think is, I mean, that's a key point, right?
Mhm.
So what would you say to sort of young students or those who are early career academics of color and, or those from underrepresented backgrounds who really might be feeling disillusioned or really might be feeling invisible right now?
Mhm. Yeah. One is that is sadly a common story, but I also say it's a common story just to know that you're not alone.
Hmm.
Gosh, that statement by itself is so powerful. Because I think back when I was a PhD student, I felt so alone. I felt like nobody else was going through what I was going through. So I would say you're not alone.
Hmm.
Um, two, I encourage students, junior faculty, very early career, doctoral students, graduate students, to think about your why. Why are you here? I say that because you gon you're gonna be tested. You're gonna go through the storm, right? Like it's inevitable. It's a part of the process.
Right.
It's a part of the process, the academic process. But then on top of that, being a Black academic, there's a whole other storm that you're gonna experience. That's just the inevitables again of the world and certainly this country and the society that we live in. So there are times where you're gonna have that why is you're gonna have to kind of dig deep and hold on to that why, and that why is gonna be what's carrying you. For me, my research is on Black women and Black womanhood, Black women's sisterhood. And my why was I want Black women to be celebrated. And I want to do research that understands and focuses squarely on our experiences because I wish that I had that information when I was growing up, right?
Mhm.
I wish that I had Black scholarship. Don't get me wrong, like, Black feminist thought, Patricia Hill Collins and Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks and, Joan Morgan. There were so many Black women scholars who I could lean on, but as a social scientist and communication, few and far between. So that was my why, right? And that's what carried me when I was like, this is hard. I don't know if I can do it, but I had to dig deep into my why. Like I've
Right.
got purpose here. For some individuals, Black, white, it doesn't matter, man, woman, sometimes their why is a little, I just wanted somebody to call me a doctor. Okay, well, I don't know if that's going to keep you through the store, right? I don't know. And I sound silly, but there are a number of people like, I just want to have a doctorate degree. Okay, I'm not gonna knock you, but and not a but, and I don't know that that is gonna carry you through. So, is there
Yeah.
another why? Is there another passion there? Is there something else in terms of your purpose? Is you've got to dig deep to that, and hold on to that, and hold on to that because there will be times where you need to call upon it. Those would be, I think, my two biggest things. The third and last thing is a little more practical, which is making sure you just have a group of people who know you and who love you and who are going to hold you down. They could be in academia, they could be out of academia. That could be your church family, that could be your blood link
Mhm.
family. I don't care who it is, but you need a solid group, 3, 4 individuals who in the midnight hour you can call upon and you can just cry and you know that they are just going to sit on the phone with you in silence, right? Because again, it can be a really lonely and isolating experience at times. And maybe that's not everybody's story, but I know it's a lot of people's stories. You're in, Timbuktu. I was in Iowa City, Iowa, so there were some times I had to just call upon some people. And so it's important for you to think about who are you going to have in your arsenal, in your corner, in your network, who can hold you down, remind you of your why
Right.
again, and support you and validate you and affirm you.
Yeah. That really, those are really key recommendations because we do need to know who has our back. Right? And so whatever reason you thought, whether like you said, I just want to be called, I just want to get a PhD and be called Dr. whomever, well, you can see how that might work for you. But having that community of women and hearing about their particular experiences. I mean, AAUW has funded like literally thousands of Black women getting their PhDs. Like you mentioned Joan Morgan, she's an AAUW alumna, right?
Yes, she is.
So
She
from Joan
is.
Morgan to Melissa Harris Perry to
Melissa
Dr. Keisha
Perry.
Blaine to Dr. Nell Painter, right? We have funded these top women, Black women who have risen in academia. And no matter what your qualifications are, no matter how well you do, right, there are those barriers that
Mm.
I've certainly heard about from a number of folks that you're going to have to climb over no matter what. So it really is important to make sure that, you know, people know that you are not alone and the community, right, just continues to grow, which is really important as well, for sure. So as someone who is, on a campus, how have you observed the landscape of diversity, equity, inclusion in higher education sort of evolving? Um,
Mm.
are there particular shifts, whether they're positive or negative, that have stood out to you since the inception of the Black in the Ivory movement?
Ugh. Okay. You want the truth or you want to lie?
I want the truth, Dr. Davis. Let's hear the truth.
Listen. Oh, okay. Well, what I have to say, I think there are a lot of people who will be this, they have seen it themselves. So I don't think I'm saying anything that's gonna, it's not known or not been identified before.
Mhm.
But 2020 definitely had a lot of people energized. Again, that summer of racial reckoning, voting him out, and successfully, and Joe Biden entering into the presidency. There was a lot of energy that was happening. All of these corporations and companies and their public statements and commitments and dollars, and within academia, you've got Harvard and Yale talking about millions and millions of dollars, creating institutes to think about for researchers to identify and genealogists to identify how the university has been funded by slave labor. Right? There was so much energy. There was so much energy. Um, and that certainly was true at my own, university. There was work that I was doing with some amazing scholars of color, faculty of color. I want to make sure I name them, Doctors Daisy Reyes and Milagros Castillo and David Embrick. And we had an amazing cabinet of administration, our president, Tom Katsouleas, and our provost, Carl Lejwe, and our CDO, Frank Tuitt. And so we were doing some amazing work before 2020, and then 2020 just and we were off to the races. And we were doing some amazing work with faculty and staff of color. The president had commissioned for an anti-Black racism course to be created, and the provost put a lot of money towards us to be able to make it happen in a month and a half, ready for fall. And we were able to do it, and everyone was so pleased and so excited. And then, when there's a lot of momentum,
Mhm.
sometimes it subsides, and sometimes, as the years pass, you start to see, was it performative,
Hmm.
right? Was it, did you agree to do things to ride a wave? Did you agree to do things to save face? Or
Right.
did you agree to do things because you actually knew it was the right thing to do? Because
Mhm.
you actually knew and believed in restorative justice. You actually believed in equity and really understood what equity requires.
Right.
Right? Um, and so as the years passed, yeah, I became, me personally, miffed and deflated,
Mm.
because there was such great momentum, and I really believed that we were turning a leaf. And then once the page turned, right? Once
Mm.
the capital C conversation shifted to something else, that's where the real work happens, right?
Right.
And you started to see that, resources became a little bit more limited,
Mm.
and individuals became, less energized. and less committed and less available,
Mm.
and started to hear a little more maybes and let's wait and no and I don't know about that and maybe we should open it up so it's not just for Black people. I'm whoa, 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 wait. The tune is changing.
Right.
So that's where I'm at, and that's what I'm noticing. That the tunes are changing, and now that we have an administration that is so bold with change, with making big changes very quickly, you really start to see, all right, so are you really about that life? Are you, right? Are you really going to go? And if you really believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, are you going to stand 10 toes down and resist and fight against and protect? Or are you now going to cower? And I use cower, I use that word, but are you now going to cower and say like, oh, well, we have to do this now because, there are, you know, look what the laws are, they're the executive orders, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh, hmm, hmm,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's where I sit today. If I'm being perfectly honest, I sit a bit miffed, a bit deflated. Um, and I'm in a pensive state of, hmm,
Mm. Okay. Okay.
what now? Right?
Yeah.
So it's just I just now think about what now? And just for me personally, what now, Shardé?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you. And you raise some really important points. When I think about over the past 5 months, events I've attended, conversations I've had with those, in academia, even talking to some of our other alumni, and just, the ways in which people talk about how every campus is approaching it in a different way, the justification for why they are or aren't moving forward, right? It's always different. Some, for the most part, decided that they weren't going to just take hear the executive order, and like you said, cower, immediately switch and, be obedient. And others saying, no, we're going to continue our commitment to success and of our students and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then others are in that sort of wait and see mode, and they're trying to make sure that their students aren't losing their way, right?
Right.
But it is a very challenging time. But I think that the level of campuses and the level of leaders, sadly, who literally just complied immediately, and a
Yeah.
lot of that really depends on the fact that so often, let's be realistic, it's about money, right?
Right.
So if you want to make sure that all of your grants, aren't going to be
Mm-hmm.
taken away from you, if you want to make sure that you're able to continue to do the research, right, that is being done on your campus and supporting your doctoral students, et cetera, people really are in a bind and
Yeah.
had to really consider the value of, sticking to their guns and saying, we're going to keep doing this. And the other piece, which is what is the financial impact that it is
Mm-hmm.
going to have on our campus, on our university, on our students.
Right.
And it's certainly challenging and obviously, perplexing time. And I think
Yeah.
so many individuals and, people that I connected with also indicated that to be a leader in higher education at this time, as it's people are really sort of fraught with, are they doing the right thing? How can they satisfy the needs of everyone? And how can they move forward and really make sure that the mission of their institution, is being upheld? And very often it's not, right?
Right.
Because they're just a lot of it is about survival.
Right. And if I can just say, two things. One is it's really important for me to constantly share my particular POV, right? I am not a CEO. I'm not a president. I'm not a provost. I never have been. That's really important because it provides necessary context for my opinion
Mhm.
about the state of where things are. And I say that because I can think back to, and even just in everyday, my job in everyday life, when we hear the moans and be groans and feedback of graduate students, right, about our program. And it's like, okay, I get it. But now you don't understand what it's like from a faculty perspective,
Right.
right? And why we made the decisions that we did, right? So they want faculty to do more. They want the chair to do more. It's like, okay, but you don't understand what it's like to be on this side.
Right.
So I say that, that I don't know what it's like to have to answer, to, your governor and to your, to the president and to other federal administrators, the Department of Education. Well, that doesn't exist anymore, but um I don't know what that's like. So that's important context for me to make sure that I state. So I can't even imagine the level of pressure that individuals are shouldering. What I also want to say is it is a bit of whiplash. And I just want to say this because we're talking Black in the Ivory. So from a Black academic perspective, it's a whiplash to be like, yes, these people are really championing us and really focusing on our issues to go
Mhm.
from that to okay, now we're going to have to we can't focus on you at all. And not only can we not focus on you, even some of the larger structures that, and resources that were in place that can trickle down to you, we're going to actually have to maybe dismantle that as well. Or, we're going to have to defund that. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's a lot to process and to make sense of. Um, so, I think that also, I think is just imbuing again, just my POV and my standpoint, how I'm feeling. And it's like during COVID when they said, the world gets a cold, Black folks get the flu. I think about right now when academia gets impacted, Black academics are pummeled, right? When
Absolutely.
when academics and scholars get shoved, academia or Black academics are like driven over by a car, right? The effects on us are disproportionately higher than it is on others, right? Just because of some of the other factors, again, racism, anti-Blackness, sexism, misogyny, war, that we're also having to confront and deal with. So, uh, that again, that's the context for which I'm looking at this.
Mhm. Definitely. Thank you. All right.
Mhm.
So being Black in the Ivory isn't just a book, right? It's certainly a call to action. And I'm wondering, AAW, obviously, we have been stepping up and we have been using our voice during this incredibly challenging time and all of the attacks on higher education and diversity, equity, and inclusion, the attacks on women, the list just grows and grows. But what would you recommend that steps that an organizations like AEW, right? What can we do to help amplify voices like yours and certainly build some pressure for change across our campuses?
Mm. I think for me personally, the dedicated dollars, I can speak about, being a fellow and receiving that fellowship. Those
Mm,
dedicated dollars and that the resources that I received to be able to do my research were so instrumental for my scholarship and then also for where I was professionally as a junior faculty person. And to know that there's an organization that has set aside dollars for somebody like me to do the type of research that I want to do is so powerful. So first, I just want to say just the fact that AUW exists and has those dollars dedicated, because I do know that right now, even private dollars and organizations are starting to get attacked as well. It's not just the public institutions, but they're starting to go after some private organizations as well, right? So I know that there's a lot more pressure for folks to be able to say, no, we're going to dedicate these resources for women of color, for scholarship that focuses on for scholarship that starts at the margins. So just the fact that it exists and is there, it is so necessary. And I think it was always necessary, but it's going to be especially necessary in the months and years to come, because it's becoming increasingly more difficult. If I can just share, even just a personal quick anecdote, that, I applied for Fulbright,
Mm,
which for this past year, and for Portugal, and Lisbon specifically. And for those who may not know, Fulbright is a federally funded program,
yep.
and was a finalist. And normally we find out in February. And weeks. I had my interview, weeks and weeks and weeks, months, 2 months is going by. Like, we should have found out by now. Got an email that they already sent their decision in February. So they're like, we don't really know what's happening. It's in, the hands of people in
Mhm,
DC.
mhm,
And then later, to find out just a few weeks ago that the administration had intervened, and that reportedly had intervened, and that executive order, that anti-DEI executive order, was put into place, so that any individual who was studying race or gender or climate change was precluded from getting the Fulbright Fellowship.
mhm.
So when we talk about, where we're at now, the, something like AAUW is critical, right? Because you're standing in the gap for individuals like me to even be able to do our job, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. The other thing that I'll say is just, I think we need, as a scholarly community, to really come together and to not only provide safe spaces for folks to be able to lament about what's happening and the
Yeah.
uncertainty that's looming, but I think to strategize
Mm,
about how we might be able to ride out this storm, because I don't know how long this is going to go on, right? I
right.
don't I don't know. We know, none of us know what's to come, and I think it's important. We had talked about this before we got on, Gloria, about not about the importance of shifting from defense to offense.
Right.
So I want to affirm and to say
Yeah.
how thankful I am for AUW. And for your question, to respond to that, is I think we need more um, spaces, closed door spaces, for folks to be able to come together, women to be able to come together, women of color, to say, okay, what are we going to do? Right.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that is a great point. And thank you for, for lifting up AAUW, because, AEW members who have been funding all of these amazing and really important fellowships and grants, right? Now for what, 100 and over nearly 140 years, have really changed the game. And, the fact that we are going to continue to fund women, and we're funding the research that is going to be critical, yeah, across fields, right? So if someone is doing research on climate change or on gender equity or sexuality or whatever, we're funding all of that, right? We have
Right.
a strong focus on trying to get more women in the fields of science, technology, right? Engineering and mathematics, right? To sort of bridge that gap, which we know impacts women of color more than anyone. And so being an organization, one, that's continuing to use our voice, being an organization that is continuing to fund women, right? Having this critical opportunity to move their careers forward, to have the opportunity, like yourself, to enter into academia, to get yourself, on the right track, is really, really important. And, I think that, making sure that we continue to have these kinds of conversations where alumni like you, we can have the opportunity to lift up your voice and your experience, it's absolutely incredible that you are also willing to tell the truth, to talk about and to share your own experience. And women coming together and having these conversations, definitely it needs to increase, certainly not decrease, right? Because like we have no idea what's sort of on the cusp for not just tomorrow, but it could be an hour from now. But I think that the energy that people are trying to build the community, and not just camaraderie, but the community, solid community, is really important. So thank you for being someone who is thinking about like what should that look like, right? Why, how can we be getting together? And the fact that we do have no idea from moment to moment what's going to happen. But AAW right now, we are in the midst of doing all the things for our incoming class, right? For the fall of 2025. We awarded $5.3 million. We have 260 awardees. And of course, we are doing what lots of folks are doing, which is unfortunately having to deal with travel bans and, international students and all the things. But we do have a commitment that we're going to maintain, and that's important.
So
So
important.
yeah. So Dr. Davis, if you could, just to close it out, if you could offer just one action, right, for
Mm,
every viewer who is with our webinar today, whether they're a student, a faculty, administrator, or if they're an advocate, what would you just urge them to do to create a more just and equitable learning environment?
mm. I'm going to echo what I put in the book, which is to uh, try not to get so overwhelmed with thinking so big. You've got to be the next Tamika Mallory, you know what I mean? Or like, BLM organization. Just think about your own sphere of influence, right?
Hmm.
Think about your own particular skill set. And it may not be on a global scale, a national scale, even a citywide level scale, right? It could be within your own program or department, your own office.
Hmm.
But think about what is it that you already possess and have that you can leverage to be able to make an impact. I think this book is a great example. I'm a researcher through and through. I write, I do research. That's the part of my job, and I'm good at it. And so to be able to go with this book and create space to amplify the voices of over 50 Black academics so that they can share their story, right? For me to be able to step back and say, okay, you all, this is a space for you all to be able to walk into the center, and I'm going to hold space for you to be able to share that. That's something that I was able to do within my own sphere of influence, my own particular skill set, leveraging what I had to try to be able to make a difference, or again, create an impact. So
Hmm.
I encourage everyone. You didn't have to be an academic, you don't have to be a scholar, you don't have to even be um, uh, in corporate America, whatever it is that you're doing. Just think about whatever it is that you possess and what you have, and how you might be able to enact change.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davis, for really just sharing your valuable insights, letting us know about the impact of Black in the Ivory, and spending your time and your knowledge with us. I'm certainly encouraging everyone to purchase your book. And as we've heard throughout the discussion, advancing equity in higher education and really in our society, just it does require more than a conversation.
That's
It
right.
really does demand bold collective action. Last month, AAW launched our 2025 strategic plan because we really wanted to outline that clear path forward as we intensify our long-standing commitment to supporting higher education as a key pathway to women's economic empowerment and mobility. And so thank you to our participants. And today I really invite each of you to be a part of AAW's journey through 5 powerful steps. The first being join, become a member of AAUW, and really align yourself with a nationwide network that is committed to gender equity. And because together we amplify our voices and our impact. Obviously, giving is next. Support our mission by investing in programs that really do drive systemic change, whether it's from funding educational research to advocacy. Every contribution fuels progress. And as I mentioned, our fellowships and grants have had an incredible impact across sectors, not only across our own country, but across the globe. Next, certainly learn about AEW's positions through our statements on our website. Please follow us on social media, and also share this conversation with your friends, with your colleagues when the recording is published on our website and on our YouTube channel. And finally, really, it's about action. Do act. Visit AEW Action Network at aew.org/act. Make your voice heard on campus or in your community or in Congress. You can certainly scan, and that will take you to the AAUW Org Act. And really, thank you so much again, Dr. Davis. Thank you so much for those of you who joined us into the AAUW team who's supporting us in the background. Um, you know, please visit our website. The recording will be there. And really, you can learn more about the upcoming professional development and what AAUW is doing in our educational programs. We do need to stand together at this very uncertain and challenging time. But most of all, we hope that everyone does take good care of yourselves. Thank you very much.